A very good morning to you and welcome to Just Africa. We are reaching you live from our studios in the commercial city of Lagos. My name is Oyinpreye Krumale, and I'm not doing this by myself. It's another wonderful time again right here on Just Africa. Good morning to you, Olumide.
Good morning, Priye. How are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I'm all good.
You came in drenched this morning from the rain.
They call it showers of blessing.
Showers of blessing indeed. Well, we hope you are going to have some form of showers of blessing this morning as we jump into the main conversation this morning. It's Just Africa. Welcome once again. For decades, the economic narrative of Africa has largely been framed through the lens of loans, aid, and grants. Now, these financial instruments, typically delivered through bilateral agreement or international financial institutions, have aimed to support infrastructural development in healthcare, in education, and emergency relief. Countries like Ethiopia, Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, Mozambique, and Democratic Republic of the Congo have been among the largest recipients of aid and concessional loans. Now, with billions of dollars flowing annually from these institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, African Development Bank, USAID of the United States of America, the European Union, and China's Belt and Road Initiative. The purpose of all these loans to support was largely developmental and to reduce poverty, build institutions, support governance, and promote human development. Yet, the appropriation and impact of these funds remain deeply, largely controversial. While some governments have used aid to build roads and improve health care and access to stabilize economies during crisis, others, have frittered it away, or they've been accused of mismanagement, corruption, and the lack of accountability projects, and often abandoned, inflated, or rerouted to serve personal political interests, raising questions about the sustainability and aid-based development model. So the question beckons, Olumide, aid to Africa and investment, is it a curse or a blessing?
Aids, grants, loans, whatever you like it, these are conditions. It comes with conditions that may not be favorable to our local communities. And just yesterday, while on another program, we were talking about how Chinese government are saying they want to do more. They want to invest
increase
more.
Their stake of investment
and
business.
There are way more investors into Africa. And I remember when Doc was saying that we don't need aid. We need partnership. We need you to come in and work for us. Don't borrow us money and tell us, oh, you will come and build roads, you come and do it. Build those infrastructures in Africa. Build it in Nigeria. Let the workforce be more of Nigerians. And yesterday, Moya was even saying it that 70% of the over 233 million population in Nigeria is the youth.
Yes, about 35. They are below the age from 35.
Yes, below the age of. So we have a very good workforce. It's just, I think it has to do with our leaders. Yes, it has to do with the will to say that, no, we do not need loans, grants, and this. Let's partner. I remember, I think last year or last 2 years, President Tinubu went for a business summit, trying to woo investors to come into Nigeria, to come and invest. That's laudable. I think you should keep doing more of that. That is what we should be pushing for. That's the narrative we should be pushing for. Not that we need, anytime you see a documentary outside Nigeria or abroad, the way they depict Africa, it's like we live on trees. Then they show an emancipated child sitting on the ground to make it look like we don't even have, maybe to drive pity. But pity is not actually good. We need partnership. We need you to bring those equipment down here. Let's partner. Build those tech hubs here. Build those industries here. And let's move forward from there.
Okay, for me, I will have to take a different perspective from Doc's, proposition, its perspective and its analysis yesterday that Africa don't need aid. All we need is investment. Change the narrative, turn in, look inward, harness your solid minerals and nest the mineral deposits you have in your country. Yes, and we are going to continue. We are going to look at that. But we're even also going to look at some of the aid that we have received and how some of this aid that we've received has impacted African countries, Nigeria, Kenya. But we also look at the downside, where some countries don't want, or they falter in they breach the contract, and the conditions that governed the way the aid or the loan was given, and they've fallen victim of that too for it. So, as far as Nigeria is concerned, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway.
I think that's the only one.
I don't think that's the only one.
The Blue Rail?
Okay, maybe we should discuss that one first before we go to
How long did it take?
Oh, of course, it took years.
Years.
It took years. And before you knew it, this administration will come to power. It will reflect in the budget consistently, year in, year out. 4 years or 8 years is gone. Then another administration comes to power, and we see we see monies being allocated to fix the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. And if I'm not mistaken, if I'm to be moderate, I think we had more than 10 years.
I don't even know which administration to credit that.
Of course, a lot of administration came. I'm sure when Jonathan was in power, he attended to that road. I'm sure when Obasanjo was in power, maybe there would have been reference to that road. I'm sure that that road was attended to times without number by the Buhari administration. And if Jonathan by himself spent 5 years on the saddle as president, or as the case may be, and former President Muhammadu Buhari spent his 8 years two-term in office, that's about 13 years gone. So and that road, time in and time out, it kept reflecting in the budget. But the thing is, were we securing loans? I know we are discussing aid, but were we securing loans from foreign countries or from foreign donor agencies like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, to facilitate the building or the repairing of that road? Of course, yes. Fashola was the Minister of Works in Buhari's administration. I think in the first administration, he was both Minister of Works and Housing. And there was a time the president came and had to separate those two ministries and made him Minister of Works. And there was one specific year he said that road is going to be completed in December. Okay, not the entire road, but a section of that road. A section of that road was going, because I remember vividly I was on that specific road covering a report and reiterating the word of the former Minister of Works. But December came that year, and we exceeded December that year, and the road was not completed. And it was completed, and it was moved subsequently. So yes, we're talking about aid, but then we're getting grants, we're getting monies running to billions of dollars. And are we going to say we really nested? So those who gave us this loan, or those who gave us the aid to facilitate such national critical project and facilities, are we going to say they did wrong, or they were trying to set us up for us? So as far as that road is concerned, okay, yes, you want to say something?
No,
as far as that road is concerned, because
sector.
Yesterday, when we were looking at that, some infrastructure and developed transportation within the continent of Africa, and how when we looked at the portion of road development for road transportation, infrastructure-wise, we looked at the fact that that specific road, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, carries about more than 250,000 vehicles.
Yes.
Commute through that road every day, and you can tell about the number of agricultural produce coming in from the northern part of the country, coming in from Sokoto, coming in from Kano, coming in from Benue State, coming in from Niger State, from Kebbi State, from Gombe State, down to the southern part of the country, then to the southwestern part of the country, and specifically to Lagos, heading all the way down to Mile 12 International Market. We could see how the nerve and the connection of that road. But the thing is, the money that we used to build that road, it came from government purse, but it came through loan and it came through aid. So it is an advantage, not only infrastructure-wise, economic-wise, because it facilitates commerce, business, and development.
The more recent one, the COVID-19 aid, what happened to it?
Tell us about it. So the COVID-19 aid.
We all saw what happened to the palliative. We saw how many, well, I don't want to go into politics, but we saw how many people stocked palliatives meant for the people, for themselves. We saw how people started looting warehouses, looting various places. All of a sudden, we were discovering warehouses that never existed.
Of course, it existed, but we didn't know that it's actually operational.
That it's actually
functional.
And not just that, prominent people in Nigeria, I remember Dangote or $10, they gave the government a certain amount of money for COVID-19. What happened? Where did the money go? Who did it? Then I remember more recently there was a particular grant, or whether it was a grant or aid we got for Nigerians. I think it was supposed to be share 10,000 naira per person, and Nigerians basically rejected it, and that was cancelled and all that. But the thing is, it's not about getting this aid. It is how it is being implemented. It is how it is being actualized. Does it actually, if you are getting aid and you're saying this aid, this grant is for the people, I'm talking about the people now, does it actually get to the people? We remember how we did the cash transfer of 50,000 naira. I remember I asked you at the point that, Priya, did you get 50,000 naira in your account? But they said 50,000 naira has been dispersed to the less privileged.
The very poor. Of course, I do not belong to that class. And you too, you do not belong to that class. They say the very
Fair enough.
Because I remember vividly when they were talking about the disbursement of that money, and they said, oh, to the very poor, to the lowest very poor of the society. So if I am not surprised I didn't get an alert. And I think you're not surprised you didn't get one too. So our responsibility is to look for the very poor, or who exactly does the government mean by very poor? We are going to come.
What about a bag of rice?
The bags of rice. We are still on the COVID-19.
Yes.
COVID-19 this now from facilitated. Okay, for Nigeria, Nigeria responded to COVID-19 pandemic by implementing anti-COVID-19 mitigation strategies in travel restrictions, and social, not only social distancing and all of that, but the United States, through the U.S. Agency for International Development and Department of State, announced on April 17th that the new funding for Nigeria for prevention and mitigation of the novel coronavirus has reached $21.4 million. Approximately 4/5 of the assistance, that's nearly $18 million, will go towards humanitarian assistance and includes for risk communication, water and sanitation activities, infections and prevention of diseases, internally displaced persons and their host communities. Yes.
How much did you call the figure?
The figure $21.4 million, yes, and then 4/5. That's about $18 million of that money,
yes,
was given to communications and sanitation activities, infections, prevention diseases, and coordination and humanitarian assistance for refugees, which are internally displaced persons and their host communities. That's a part of it for COVID-19. You have done well to have referenced some of the palliatives that came in, that the government of the country bought, and probably access from multinational agencies and the support coming from other bilateral.
Then we also found out that this COVID-19 palliative had been disbursed to state governors.
Yes. Yes, to state governors, and there were warehouses we could see even when they went out during that time, when those warehouses were boggled up by protesters to go fritter away some of this COVID-19 palliatives. We could see the faces of some people that belong to some political party and their pictures, well printed on those COVID-19 palliatives. Yes, but that would be the management aspect of it. So, if Africa has not really utilized African countries, I mentioned the number of the names of those countries, Nigeria, Ghana, name it, Mozambique, and all of that. If they've not really maximized the monies that they've received for COVID-19, for other aid assistance that is coming from the Western countries or coming from the IMF or from the International Monetary Fund, from the Paris Club and all of that, then it is not their fault.
Yes, I know.
Because it is intended for good, but mismanaged by those that it was intended for, or the ones who kept their economy. So if we're going to blame them, let's briefly take a look at some of the analysis that we have. Now, from aid to investment, and we are rewriting Africa's history by way of this narrative. The emerging shift from aid to dependency or investment-led growth marked a critical turning point in Africa's economic story. The continent is increasingly seeking strategic partnerships on foreign direct investment, private equity, and capital market development to fuel industrialization, entrepreneurship, and job creation. Now, rethinking this role of multilateral and global institutions, multilateral organizations such as the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, United Nations Development Programs, UNDP, and the African Development Bank are transitioning their models from traditional aid to blended finance risk guarantees and infrastructure investment vehicles, which is vehicles for instance, the AFDB's African Investment Forum now focuses on bankable investment opportunities rather than grants. World Bank, International Financial Organization, is increasingly investing in African startups and SMEs. These institutions recognize aid alone cannot develop Africa. Investment is required to unlock the continent's potential: agriculture, energy, fintech, transport, and digital economies. The rise of strategic investment partnership by these global players like China, the United Arab Emirates, India, UK, and the EU are now seen as funding African infrastructure, logistic hubs, railways, and industrial zones, but often under commercial terms rather than concessional aid. Africa is moving away from being a beneficiary of charity to being a continent offering returns to investment, market access, and strategic geopolitical influence. I'm going to give you examples in that, but just let's stop there for a moment. Now, do remember, China, whether in Kenya, helped to build one of their seaports some years ago. Now, the current administration of William Ruto, when he came into office, had to face some challenges where the government, there was some form of inflation in the country, or inflation heightened. He made a lot of promises to the people in the country, but he had not been able to fulfill them, because there's one thing to make political promises, and there is another thing when you get into office, when you are faced with managing power, managing people, managing resources, with a myriad of problems, politically and economic-wise, that you have to deal with, and you shortage scarce resources. Then you are faced with the real deal.
Okay.
So China, at that moment, was threatening to take over that seaport from Kenya. And I believe they got over it, and they got to an amicable settlement. So that's just one of it. And that in itself is a disadvantage. But it boils down on the previous administration that managed that process, including the seaports. So currently now, as we speak, the current administration in Nigeria is engaging in the 3 million tech talent program by the Tinubu administration, with the target to train about 3 million Nigerian youths for startups. What? How much is that? The World Bank is saying that, okay, we are going to monitor it and see its impact. Then we are going to commit to it. But the EU has already given about 11 million euros, rather,
yes, 11 million euros.
For that project. So you could see that they are now even more strategic, that look, aid alone will not benefit African countries. Our aid needs to be channeled towards developmental purpose. So what are they doing now? They are targeting infrastructure.
You said that aid alone would not benefit
Africa. But they now have to be the one to manage the process by targeting infrastructural development. That means when they are giving this aid, they're okay, we are going to give it straight to the 3 million technical program initiative by the Tinubu administration. If we are giving this loan, we are we are giving this loan or aid, we are channeling it straight to the development or the empowerment of African SMEs. If we are giving this loan, we make sure that we are directing the loan towards infrastructural development by building an airport. China recently said they want to build an electric vehicle plant somewhere in Abuja. The lithium plant that we spoke about 4 of them that the Minister of Solid Minerals of Mining, Dele Alake, talked about, they're about 80% complete. And they are being facilitated not only unilaterally by the Nigerian government. Some of them are coming from the loans that we are accessing from the multilateral agencies, and others are coming from monies that we are borrowing from China, from IMF, and other. So, if they are not channeled, if it's just an executive order, like I was saying yesterday, how is it not going to benefit us? So, whose fault is it? Because as you can see, we can safely say that the IMF is thinking for the good of Nigeria and other African countries. But the question is, by way of the way this loan has been administered and managed, the leadership of these African countries, are they thinking for the benefit of these African countries?
But I feel nobody gives you money for free without getting anything in return. Yesterday, I remember Doc was talking about a particular country that came out and said no to same-sex marriage and all that, and they were yanked out.
They were yanked out. Okay.
I remember during Jonathan's administration too, something like that happened.
Approached.
And he said no, and he was applauded. Nigerians really applauded him for that. I remember there was this particular aid, I'm trying to remember it, that though it was a rumor that part of the contract was that we were supposed to, it was supposed to encourage the LGBTQ community, while the federal government came out to debunk that it was not part of the...
Oh, yes, it was an international, it was an international bill that had to do with trade. There's a pact, I've forgotten the name of it, but it's Nigeria.
Some of this,
yes.
Not all.
Minister Mohammed Idris, who is the Minister of Information,
so some of this aid, it comes with underlining conditions. If you look at some of our toll, I remember there was a particular toll gate in Lagos that they said they were going to collect toll fees, and Nigerians protested, and it was stopped. I think one of those ones running across Ajah and the rest, Ajaxes and all that, they were supposed to collect tolls. I remember even how long it took for, I think it was Jonathan administration, maybe Obasanjo, before we stopped the collection of toll gates along Ibadan Express and all that. Okay. Some of these are the things I'm talking about. Nobody gives you money for free. These aids, these grants, it doesn't just come for free. We hear every now and then, you hear IMF coming out to tell you, oh, do this, do this. Just yesterday, was it the World Bank that was saying that we should increase the
tariff on alcohol and sugary drinks
before we can access certain, why?
It's for
before we can access $750 million, whatever you call loan or grant or what. Why? Okay, must there be strings attached to you giving us certain things? Okay, fine. Every country needs loan, grants, and all that.
Every country should be responsible for itself.
But don't give it to us. Let us decide what we'll use it for. Let us decide how we would use it. Don't tell us, oh, if I'm going to give you this, you must do this, you must do that, you must... Okay. Or better still, why can't we look inwards? Now, you talked about China building an electronic plant. We're having notions there. And I'm sure there are other investors. I think most of these investors are just looking to see what happens. Let's see what Innocent would do. Let's see what he will achieve. Then more people will come in. I believe that there are a lot of people who would still want to invest in oil. They are just, maybe Dangote is like the cat that bells the
one who bells the cat.
The one who bells the cat, rather. So I feel let's look inwards to how we can actually encourage investors. If we're going to get grants, if we're going to get loans, aids, and let it be a form of partnership. We've always discussed of how China is secretly depleting some of our resources, though it hasn't been confirmed yet. But these are some of the things. Chinese would not come into it. They see Nigeria as what do you call it? A green land. fertile enough for cultivation and all that. So that is why they're coming to Africa, because they believe that they would make, and it's not as if the money, they're sending back, they are repatriating the funds back home. So what are we gaining?
Okay. Yes, they are repatriating the money back home, according to the words of Olumide. So what are we gaining? You're still watching Just Africa. We're going to break briefly. And we'll take Cashcraft as we go on break. And when we return, we are talking about loans. We're talking about aid in Africa and investments. Is it a blessing or a curse? We as a country, as a continent, have we really managed the process and the proceeds that we've got from those who are the multilateral agencies that are, advancing these loans and these aids to us? Or are we the ones mismanaging it? And are the strings attached, the conditions, are they for our good? Do they even need to exist in the first place? Who are we to blame? We'll be back in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Once again, many thanks for joining us. We are talking about aid to Africa, resources, loan. Is it for proper investment? Is it a blessing to the country, or is it a curse, or is it a trap? As most Africans have said, that the IMF, the European countries, the EU, and other countries, they're just advancing this loan to us because they want to entrap us. I don't believe that. In fact, I think Africa needs loans. I think they need aid. If we are going to go to part of industrialization, the thing is, whenever we access this fund, we have to use it for the purpose for which it was advanced to us as a nation or as a continent. If not, we will go nowhere. So now, let's go on. African leaders, when we talk about domestic resources mobilization and accountability, African leaders are also being called upon to mobilize domestic capital, curb illicit financial flows, improve tax systems, and reduce corruption. Without these reforms, even well-structured aid or loans and investments may falter. There is a growing push for governments to create an enabling environment for business, for businesses, protect property rights, and reduce red tape to attract long-term capital narrative. And the power and the global perception shifting in the economic narrative is also another thing to consider. And that's not just about money. It's about reframing Africa from a continent of need to one of opportunity. Maybe the Chinese, maybe they saw many opportunity in Nigeria. Maybe other Western countries, maybe they see an opportunity in Nigeria and they feel we have to be part of, we have to have a chunk of these opportunities. The greenery in Africa is quite attractive to industrialists because we have some of the solid minerals here would be the food for their factories over there. Media, media organizations, think tanks, and African leaders must equally challenge the optics of dependency and champion a story of self-reliance, innovation, and partnership. This also means that tracking the effectiveness of aid received. I spoke about this earlier on. So, Olumide, I think we need loans. I think as African countries, we need aid. We must channel them. Niger State, we discussed recently.
Okay.
With collaboration with Dangote.
True.
To do what? To take out about 32 acres of land for rice production, 30,000, 32,000. Then they're equally looking at, from what will come up from that, about 5.8 megawatts of electricity will be produced for the farming community, for the rice mill. There's going to be technology that will be running the rice mill. And the paddy rice, if the Niger State, this project in Niger State kicks off very well, it's really going to cater to, to local rice production and supply. And I dare say it will extend to supplying other African countries ambiguous to, proximous to Nigeria. So if we look at it from that aspect, Dangote is a local. So it's involving in that. But before then, we must have received some form of loans in agriculture. Yesterday we were talking about the fertilizer saga and how the extension workers and some of the Ministry of Agriculture.
Still on this Dangote. Now, imagine if this was an aid gotten from China or any other place. Now, with Dangote on ground, with his foot on ground, there will be some form of or some level of transparency, because it's Dangote. He would want to see his money going to the right place. He wants to see his investment, every other thing going to the right place. He would ask questions because he's on ground. His team will be there, in collaboration with the Niger State. They will monitor this thing. They will they will make sure they see the impact of it. And if for further investment is needed, he will be advised by his experts and all that.
Okay.
The major thing, I'm not against loan and grants, but the major thing is transparency, accountability. Are we accountable for these loans? We remember all too well, I was reading some days back, about $24 million.
Yes.
Which was from EFCC, that was gotten from the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, as Ms. Betta Edu. 24 million. And this money was in 50 different bank accounts.
50 different bank accounts.
Yes. So now imagine one person is sitting on this amount. So I don't have problem with getting aids, getting grants. It's just, are we ripe for it?
Ripe for aid, for grants?
Yes. When I mean ripe, yes. Accountability also, it falls under us being ripe for it. If we're not accountable to ourselves, we're not ripe for it. It's like you giving someone money. Someone comes to me today, I don't have a job, and you give him money. Some people will tell you, teach him how to fish instead of giving him money. Show him that this is what you can do. Then you can give him some form of little money, and I know some tribes in Nigeria, what you do is you go and you come under someone as an apprenticeship. He will train you for years. Then when he is certain that, yes, this person can be on his own, he will give you something. Then you go establish your own venture and all that. That's also good.
But if we want to look at it now, let me say this. In 2024, total official development assistance to Africa from DAC members was estimated to be about $42 billion, representing 1% decrease in real term compared to 2023. Within this, net bilateral official development assistance to sub-Saharan African countries was about $36 billion. $36 billion, which is a 2% decrease. Additionally, the U.S. foreign aid to Africa in 2024, approximately $12.7 billion. That's
a lot.
U.S. aid. So this attitude, this leadership disposition of lack of planning or of lack of money or funds that will be specifically tied to projects is a key problem. The European Union or Europe during colonialism used Africans to build their economy. Not only Africans to build their economy, to build their farmlands, the minerals and the gemstones, most of the precious stones and the solid minerals they came and they carted away from here, served as food for their factories there.
True.
Some of the solid minerals that they've actually processed and they added value to it, built the electricity infrastructure in some of the most powerful European countries. In those climes, as we speak now, electric power doesn't blink. So how many African countries do we have now that we can say we can boast for 3 months or 1 year? Constant power supply without electricity blinking. Now, when they ferried all these goods...
What about Ghana?
I'm coming on Ghana. Well, let's see if they've done it for a year. The whole of Ghana. Electricity.
I don't know about now. There was
for
a
1
time
year.
They celebrated 10 years.
10 years.
But I was
or
way
electricity not blinking.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe
But I don't know about now.
I'll need to speak to a Ghanaian to
I know now.
verify that.
Now, definitely, when they're about to take power, they would even inform you. It's not like
Okay. So where I was going is this: when the Europe were taking out these resources from Africa, one man in Europe did not take the whole of that fund to himself or to herself. It was not. It probably, you can say, it was corruptly taken away, shipped from Africa. That it was corruptly dispensed in Europe. They spent it in building infrastructure that is for communal good, that is for social good, that is for developmental purposes. We could see all that spread around Europe until today. We could see that they are far developed and they have a name, the first world countries. Maybe this is the time for Europe to build Africa in return. And they've been doing that in terms of loan, in terms of aid, and in terms of grant. But what happened in return? African leaders are stealing away this money. As we speak, all European countries, that's why they have European Union, they are tied together by way of transportation. They are connected by rail. They are connected by road transportation. They are connected by seaports and by airports. And when you travel around Europe, as far as you are European and you are coming from these countries that are recognized within themselves, the documentation that is required for moving from one European country to another is very, very simple, and just as simple as those who have experienced it. And I'm not talking about Africans who experienced it. I'm talking about European citizens there. The African Continental Free Trade Area is supposed to be an umbrella body where African Union and African countries. Now, if in 2023 alone, foreign investment, or by way of loans, or by aids, is total about $12 billion that was given to Africa, or that came into the African continent. What did we use it for? Did we build roads to connect Nigeria to Niger Republic, to connect to Ghana, to connect to Congo, to connect to the West Africa, and connect it to South African countries, to connect to the East African countries? Are we doing that so that we can facilitate trade? Because as long as infrastructure is built to uphold trade, business, and investment and development, if that infrastructure is built, businesses will emerge to take advantage of this infrastructure that are going to create jobs for the people in society and bring further and more development. Industries are going to span up. Now we're talking about electricity. And for the moment that we do in Africa, we do not have electricity that can sustain our level of aspiration for industrialization. Is mind-boggling, and African presidents and leaders should think it twice. That is one thing I want to look after, and probably maybe after your input, then we can now start talking about other aspects too. If the AfCFTA is what Africa is really taking advantage of.
You know, let's look at power also. We've also received, I'm looking at a $500 million project focused on improving disco performance and a large-scale metering program. That was from World Bank. We have the rural electrification. I think that's about, I can't get the figure right here, but these are some of the aids and power. Different administrations have come in and have gone, and none have been able to solve power. And you have always said it, that if you really want to create an enabling working environment for both local and foreign investors, fix power. Why haven't we? If we take this large chunk, if we take this 22 or is it $21 million, if we take it and invest it in power, would it work? Do we have the willpower? Will we be able to say no to corruption? Will it go to the right sources?
Why can't you just use the money for the purpose the money was allocated for or collected? Why can't we just use it for that purpose? I'm
saying, why not get aid or grant for power, to fix power? If you are getting to fix roads and the power is not stable, you yourself, you said it, that which country has gone 3 months without uninterrupted power? Why not fix the things that matter? Why not get grants and fix the things that matter?
No. What we should be looking at, we should be looking at the leadership in Africa.
Okay.
That's what we should be looking at. Now, okay, Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso is on the saddle.
Yes.
And one of the key...
Good initiative.
Yeah, some of the key assistance that he is asking from Russia, from North Korea, and some of the key members in the BRICS bloc is development. And that development is connecting major roads that have the potential to facilitate commercial and business trade routes and activities between Burkina Faso and Côte d'Ivoire. And Côte d'Ivoire. So, and that road at the moment now is receiving attention. Is also paying attention to power, to power, and is paying attention to water supply. Now, one thing we must understand is this. Why must it take a military president or a military administrator to jump into doing this? Because one of the key reasons, now we are not promoting coup or taking over power through the barrel of the gun. But these are some of the projects that the previous civilian administration would have engaged in and launched. The $8.9 million tomato paste factory is there that is working on. But the thing also is this. When he's doing this, he's going to be receiving loans, aids, and grants from some of the Western allies. Western allies, yes, which is not Europe, not France anymore. And this time it is Russia, it is China, it is North Korea, and all of that. So,
even though that could be political.
Yes, of course it is. There is no business that crosses from one country to another in the international business development, bilateral ties that does not have geopolitical undertones. They all have geopolitical undertones, and no country can just be attracted. Even Nigeria, we talked about, some of those conditions are fueled by geopolitical undertones, by loyalty.
Yes.
And of course, they also use other concepts of balance of power. So if we're not careful with the kind of attention that nation is receiving, and it sprawls through all other sectors. Now, one other thing is including security. So if we're not careful, one name has been attached to civilian administration and civilian government in Africa, even though Paul Kagame wants to be rewriting that history, Paul Kagame of Rwanda. He seems to be rewriting that history. But one thing is always attached to African civilian leadership is that the way they run government is most of the time is for primordial reasons. Personal interest and goals that are national development driven are scarce. And even when they are present, they are not well given the attention. And the monies for that purpose most of the time is frittered away through corruption. Why can't we just try to get something right? The Green Energy Initiative.
Thank you.
It's not what most African countries want to jump into, because they feel that if we are really going to nip it in the bud and go the way of industrialization, green energy will not solve it for us for now, because we do not have the capacity, we do not have the technology, and we are receiving attention from the World Bank and other bilateral, multilateral organizations to sponsor that initiative. But that means we are going to abandon the raw industrialization that is driven by electricity and that is also driven by the solid minerals that we are supposed to tap beneath our feet, most of which go contrary to the Green Energy Initiative.
True.
So until African leaders put their foot on the ground and to be individual, to be goal-oriented, and goal-oriented means having like a 30, 50, 60 years national plan, that irrespective of the political party that comes to power or comes to take over the reins of power, comes to take over the saddle of power in any African country, there is a national development plan that has been set in place that he is bound to follow. Yes, they have goals they have manifesto, which is the party manifesto through which they win election and got into power. They will have to attend to that as well. But the national development plan that would have come into existence by way of state, by way of the sovereign state national plan that has been put on ground should take precedence more than the plan or the manifesto that has been touted by the political party to get into power. So even if he's going to come to power, of course, 60% should be given to developing the national plan, and 40% should be channeled towards developing the political party's plan for getting into power, because they equally hold that responsibility to the people who actually casted their vote for them to take over political power.
Preye, I would gladly agree with you that we need loans, we need grants, we need aids, if certain things are put in place, creating an enabling environment, investing in human capital, invest in education. Look at our education sector. It is deplorable. It is not good. Look at health. Okay, fine. Let's say entrepreneurship support. We are trying to, I think maybe let's say we're testing the waters. We're trying to, develop that with this whole skill acquisition, partnership and all that. Let's say that is being looked at. What about health? What about education? These are where we really need these grants, these aids to go. Not building every year we're always building roads, we're always building roads, we're always building roads. It's like we've signed maybe a long-term or forever deal with that. But basically, I mean, building an infrastructure that supports local and foreign investment, it really matters. We need that.
Okay.
Do you understand? We do not need pity. Join us in our journey. Come and build, like you said, fine, we cannot go into renewable energy because we don't even have the technology. Even, what do you call it, the refinery, we need more refineries. We need that technology. We need that infrastructure. We need it in Nigeria. We shouldn't be exporting. We shouldn't be then we bring it back and we are buying it at a very exorbitant price. It doesn't. Dangote should not even be the only one. We should have more. Yes, we have illegal miners, we have oil bunkering and illegal oil refineries and all that. What can be done? I remember Doc was saying that these people who own this illegal mining factory, they don't even have the technology to produce it in its purest form. Let's look into that.
Okay. Thank you so much for watching Just Africa this morning, and this is where we will draw the curtain. But before we go, we have something special for you completely, but that's after we've left. We'll bring that to your way. Many thanks for watching. My name is Oyinpreye Krumale.
And I am Olumide Sokoya. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Now we'll bring you the uniqueness of Africa. We're taking you down to Guinea-Bissau, and we're saying bye-bye with that.